So previously, we've made some videos talking about how to process heart rate data. There were some important steps that weren't included before, and I'm just going to go over what some of those are now. One of those steps is after we've gone through and we put in all of our R peaks into a file. This isn't actually something that we can really easily read into a statistical software program. So there's an intermediate step that we're going to take. I'm just going to go find the right place where you have to have EMSE run a script. And we've gotten some help from the developer on how to do that. So this is what the script file looks like. For each person, you're going to copy and paste this and put it into their folder. You'll copy and paste this script in there. You don't really have to do that, but I like to do that. Then you're going to open up the script file using Notepad or some other editor like that. And in here, this section, you need to change for every single participant to change it to basically the ID number and if there's any additional text. So what I like to try to always have these physio files in the same format where it's arcs underscore and then just the ID number and no date, just because it makes it easier when editing this script file. If you forget an S, you have to change other things. So it's just easier to originally save your PDF file as arcs underscore ID number, and then you don't have that problem. It's like here, I've got some extra text. Might not even have that anymore in this file. Oh, there it is. You can see that there's the extra text there. Anyway, so you make those changes. It'll ask if you want to save it. You'll save it, close that out. And then you go over to where it says batch, and then run script, and you'll go find whichever one you're working on. You'll click this, and you'll press open to run the script. It's automatically going to run it, and it will generate some new files for you. And one of those new files that you're going to want is it'll say arcs underscore the ID number .pdf, and it'll say .hrv bin, and that will get put into one of your folder. It's going to go there by default. There you go. You can see it right there. This one here, we're happening to look at participant 103, but you want to load that in just like you would load in any other time series file. So you would go to right click, add files. Since we're in 103, we'd go find it in 103. And then obviously there's a lot more things here currently because this data has been fully processed. But there you go, you would load that in. When you load it in, you double click it to sort of bring it onto screen. There will be a couple of questions about what to do. And you basically want to say to those questions, don't add a probe, don't add the average probe, and there's no reference. So the reference is sort of outside the data. So when you get asked the question, do you want to use an implicit reference? I just say, some sort of implicit reference, whatever you have to pick, so that they don't add one through any of their other sort of protocols. Like you don't want them to add a common average reference or something like that. You just don't want them to do that. So whatever you need to do to say no to adding any of those things and no to a probe, you'll get something that looks like this. It's not very user friendly. You see the R's in there. I like to change it to superimposed, and then I go to view. You don't actually have to do this, but as far as processing, but I like to do it. I turn off everything except for one. I'll just like pick one to keep on thinking about it. Press apply. Okay. Just a little bit slow. Basically, what this is doing is it's showing you like this. You can kind of think about this as time, sort of like time in between each one of these, peaks as they're unfolding across, the study. And it does kind of have this sort of boxy shape to it, and that's fine. That's normal. It's supposed to look like that. But honestly, you don't really need to look at this. but you do need to have this file, this file loaded in for every single person. And once you've done that, I talked about how there's a step where for after you've processed a lot of people, then you can get into batching and getting the data into the format that we want, where it's going to separate out the heart rate activity for each one of the 4 conditions in our task. So to do that, you go to batch, event pipeline, and this is the same for EEG, ERP data, anything like that. This is the same dialog that you want to go to. I've tried to make these already in advance so that people won't have to be recreating the wheel. So you go to load all, and you'll pick the one that's newest. So I believe it's this one. For the purposes of this, though, I am going to go into it in a little bit greater detail just to show you what's going on in each of these. So this one, there's really like nothing that's important in here. In this first one, second step, we don't have anything for experiment. We don't have any target event rules. First thing that really matters is specify bins. So we're going to go to edit create just so I can show you those. Our epoch, this is sort of our time window, is from 1 second before the picture comes on to 4 seconds afterwards. This is more than we actually need, but I like to give us a little bit of extra cushion. Press on edit just to show you some more things that's going on here. So this is our interval of interest that I was just describing. For filtering options, we want to have the filter be, that we're not using one, so it doesn't really matter. We have a baseline though that is important. And for the baseline, we're saying that our baseline period is just the first 500 milliseconds beforehand. So we check this box. 0 is for baseline correction. And then here we're determining the time, you select the time interval with respect to onset of target event. So basically from 500 milliseconds before the picture comes on to when the picture's on, that's our baseline period. So that's what's going on there. And again, you can always check these out if you want. You can review these bins and see what's going on over here. Each one of these numbers is going to be an event. And for us, those are pictures for the most part. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All of these are pictures that are anger, that are angry faces up until 32, because we have 32 per condition. And then if you looked at, for instance, happy, that's going to go from 41 until 72. Take my word for it that there's 32 in each one of these. And then neutral is right after that, and then animal is going to be a bit further along. And that's what's going on here. We don't need to take a look at those. Close out of that. For selecting your time series files, this is important. So normally you're not going to edit anything here. You're just going to load all. You can always double check the specify bins to make sure this looks right, and making sure that, in particular, this section is correct. You can always double check that if you want to be extra cautious. Say OK. And then for selecting time series, you're going to open this up. Now, if you're going to be doing something where like you're creating an average for, let's say, people with PTSD, you would then need to know which ID numbers those are and only check those boxes. But we're going to get that into that kind of thing in a separate video. But normally when I'm just processing, I'll clear everything. And then I'll just pick whoever the people that I did. So maybe we had 2 follow-ups in a recent week, and so I would click these check marks. The emphasis there being on it's got to be the .hrv one. Just click those 3 boxes, and then press OK. And basically, what we're doing there is we're saying only do this batching for these 3 people. In theory, you could do it for everybody every single time. You wouldn't want to do these files anyway, but you could do it for everybody every single time. You wouldn't want to do that because it's going to take a really long time. So just do the ones that you're doing that particular day. And you press OK. For processing options, this is the default apply the, each person's individual filter. Do that. It doesn't really matter for this kind of data, but it's fine to do that here. And then for output, we're talking about time domain averages. It's nothing. We don't need a grand average. We'll talk about that in a different video. And then you just hit execute and it would run, but we don't need to because we don't actually have any data that we're looking at here. But that's sort of the second step of processing the heart rate data and getting your averages by condition. You'll see here it says 32 because that's how many trials there are. Same thing, 32 for happy, 32 for anger. And that's that. That's how you batch the heart rate data, and also that important intermediate step where you are making sure that you run that script outside, that you do through this dialog, and it's kept in those text files. So that's an important intermediate step, which is sort of unique to the heart rate processing. All right, happy processing.